to another episode of the Tokusatsu Network. Today I'm joined by Robert Baldwin from Kyoryuger and Sazer-X.
Yes, I did that too, didn't I?
Yes, hello.
It's been a few years.
Yeah, you looked a bit puzzled. So, let's start from the beginning. You are originally from Canada, or you live and grew up in Japan?
That becomes a little confusing. Let's see. I am a Canadian citizen. My parents are from Canada. I was born in Kyoto. I was raised in Hiroshima. And so, as a child, I spent all my time in Japan. And when I was about 14 years old, due to work matters for my father, and we ended up going back to Canada. So I finished off high school in Canada. After finishing high school in Canada, a lot of back and forth between Canada and Japan. Eventually, I was back in 1995, came back to Japan, and haven't been able to afford to go back to Canada since then.
Aside from your acting work, you also do translation work for television and film as well?
I do translating, interpreting, for television, movies, and but not only limited to that, stage events at times, but mostly the translation work is corporate related, between Japanese and foreign corporations, their communications, and things along those lines. But the work isn't just limited to that. I'll take on odd jobs here and there just because I like to have such a variety in my life. If there's a festival in our neighborhood, then I'll be out there cooking some yakitori and selling that. Which gets to be interesting because a lot of people walk by and say, okay, now, hairy white guy cooking chicken on skewers here, you know. There's something wrong with this picture.
Do you get like how Japanese were in the band and
it has happened.
Yeah. It has happened.
That actually, the whole thing right there started just because I was cooking some yakitori for some friends at one time, and then so many people dropped by saying that they wanted to buy some, and it's like, these aren't for sale. These are for my friends, but you can have one if you really want, you know. And then I realized that there was that market out there, so I have on occasion. I don't do it too often.
It's a hobby more than anything.
Yes, I mean, yeah, I'm lucky to break even when I do that. You know, it's because you have to get all the chicken and everything all prepared in advance, so that all you have to do is cook it. You know, and then if I was doing that for a living, then I'd probably have a much smoother system. But because of the fact that it's not too often that I do it, I take a lot more time than I should be taking, which kind of doesn't equate to a good income.
I was quite surprised when I came to Japan because yakitori I thought was just chicken breasts, kind of, but really yakitori can be like everything. It's the skin, it's even like the tao and the heart.
The yakitori, I mean, just going from the name, tori being bird, yakitori is primarily chicken. Even though there are situations that you would have, let's see, kamo would be more like duck, I guess, which is a possibility. And at times, even though it's put under the name yakitori, they'll have one or two items on the menu which are like pork. And then they use everything that is considered edible, which from the gizzard to, as you said, the heart, and then you've got bonjiri, which is basically chicken anus.
Oh yeah,
Which
it's quite tasty.
It is. It just doesn't sound too appetizing, you know.
I always wanted chicken brain, but supposedly that's not a speciality.
That I haven't heard of, but if you're interested in the brain, it's not chicken. They've got there are some places that'll serve suzume, which is, I believe they're swallows, and it'll be on 2 skewers. They'll have 2 entire swallows, bone and everything. And a friend of mine really enjoys it, and he ordered one for him and one for me, and I said, that's just a bird without a beak. It looked like a bird. Yeah. And as he's crunching at it, he says, yeah, when you get to the head, and nice tender inside, it's great. It's like, no, I'll pass on that.
I think I can try that. I like getting prawns and sucking out the brains, so...
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of food matters. It depends on what you were raised with. I mean, in Japan, depending on where you are, you'll have inago, which is a kind of grasshopper, and you have kids munching those for snack. I look at it, I see a bug, you know, and I really don't find insects to be all that appetizing. But at the same time, I mean, ever since I was a kid, all sorts of different types of seafood, which were considered to be disgusting by North Americans, you know, and like squid, octopus, wonderful stuff, which has recently become quite accepted in North America. But when I first went to Canada, I mean, everybody thought that's the stuff you throw back into the ocean when you're trying to get something else, you know, and raw fish, that was completely out of the question back then, which now it's actually become a kind of a fad where everybody wants to have sushi or sashimi, you know? And this is stuff that I had ever since I was a small kid. Even back then it was a little expensive, so it was only on special occasions.
Yeah, sushi is surprisingly expensive. I thought it would be cheaper in Japan.
Well, it depends on where you go. If you go to a proper sushi restaurant, then it can be quite expensive. Where if you go to one of those kaiten sushi places that has it on a conveyor belt, then there are enough of them that sell it for 100 yen a plate. Which, with that, you can generally fill yourself up without worrying too much about the cost. But it's not as good as the other stuff.
As much as I love talking about food, let's swing back to your translation work. Have you...
I translate menus too.
Oh, really? I could talk for about 2 hours. What TV programs or films people watching that they might know that you worked on?
I don't even have a complete list of that myself. I don't remember exactly everything that I did. There are so many shows that I've forgotten about their existence. When I'm busy often enough, I'll get some translating work for partial scripts and things. And without even confirming the title of the show, not even knowing which network it's going to be airing on, translate it and send it off. And so, but I'd say a good portion of television shows that have foreigners in them with lines, or even Japanese people speaking English lines. A good portion of those I've probably been involved in. I'd say from 10 to 20%, which is actually a pretty big chunk of the business.
Yeah. So you're the go-to guy for a lot of channels, I imagine.
And a lot of channels will go to other people as well because they don't charge as much as I do. But quite often what will happen is they'll go to these other people and then they'll come back to me. And then I'll charge them more. And they'll say, you told us, you quoted a lower price last week. And yeah, that was last week. The deadline is a lot closer. Yeah. I don't have as much time. I'm going to lose a little bit of sleep on this. I'm going to have to charge you more.
I'm so busy now. I'm probably going to fit in.
And but with movies, there's a lot less that come my way, and a lot of that is just because the movie business is so closed, tied in within itself, where they're not all that willing to try out new people. There are certain companies out there which have reputations, not necessarily accurate reputations, but reputations saying that they are really good at what they do. They have the experience, but not all of them are as good as they say they are. And I have had so many occasions that I would be sitting in a movie theater just holding myself back because I'd see the subtitles right there saying, "That's not what he said."
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've only been here 6 months. I go, but that's not what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but I'm trying to break into that field as much as I can, and at the same time, not only break into the field myself, but try to improve the standards themselves, so that people don't get translating work just because they've been doing it for the last 30 years. That the work actually goes to the people who can do it well, and the people who have been doing it for 30 years, if they improve their work, then they can keep working. That's what I hope happens.
Yeah, I think that's the Japanese business problem. It goes to the person with 30 years experience, but may not necessarily not be as good as the person with 10 years, say.
Japanese society as a whole gives a lot of credit to experience. And so if you've been working at something for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, you must be good at it. But that isn't necessarily the case, because things change. Languages change. If you try to translate something from Japanese into English using English from 30 years ago, so much of the language has been outdated. The same goes the other way. Japanese from 30 years ago, a lot of it is not used these days. And then you go to more, other professions, which could in fact have an influence on a person's very life. Like, you take a look at the field of medicine. You try to practice 30-year-old medicine and today's medicine side by side. That 30-year-old medicine, that person who's being treated with that technology is most likely not going to live as long as the person who's getting the newest. And translation, sure, it's not as life-threatening, but it does change. Like, recently, a lot of DVDs sold in Japan, foreign films on DVD, have been retranslated. Because if you have the Japanese translation from when the movie was first released, a lot of people don't understand. It's not up to date. It's not. They're not using terms that are familiar to people these days. And so it just, like, the translation itself needs to be redone once in a while. If you're looking at it, if you're watching something from the original language, if you're an English speaker watching an old English language film, odds are you've heard of the older terms. If you're a person who's not that familiar with the English language, watching something that's 50 years old, you're learning today's English, and you're watching a film from 50 years ago using terms that are not used these days, then you're going to be at a complete loss. So, all these subtleties that need to be worked out. And with all that translation, there's actually one recent accomplishment that I'm actually quite proud of, which I love to brag about this all the time. But
please do.
there was a film entered in the Tokyo International Film Festival last October. The film's called Forma, a Japanese film, and I was asked to do the subtitles for that. And the film managed to win an award, and it is actually going to be screened in Berlin next month as well. And at the time that I was doing the translation, I was thinking it's just another translation job. I'll do what I do. After it got its award, I was invited to a sort of a wrap party for that, where one of the judges had... it actually wasn't one of the judges. It was one of the people who decide which films get to be submitted, get to be screened. Mm-hmm. So it's not quite a judge, but anyway, this guy had sat me down and he told me that for a Japanese film at an international film festival to be awarded, it requires a very good translation. No matter how good the film is, if the translation is substandard, then the judges, usually more than half the judges, are English speakers. They might not be native English speakers, but they speak English. But they don't speak Japanese. And therefore, for these judges to understand the movie to its full extent, the subtitles need to be of a high quality. And that was one of the reasons that Forma actually got that award. And that was really, I mean, it did wonders for my ego.
That's great. That's awesome.
I mean, being told by people who have nothing to do with the industry that, oh, you did a wonderful job. I mean, it's nice being told that.
Mm.
But it's just amateurs. You don't know how much they know about the industry they're talking about. And when you're talking to somebody who's supposed to be a professional in that industry, and when they start patting you on the back, then you think, hey, maybe I am doing a good job.
Hey, man.
I'm better than I thought.
How did you start your acting career in Japan? Did you start as a translator first and then went into acting, or?
How did it happen? I guess it started out with acting, but more as an extra. I had, like, the original acting I did was just a bit part in high school when I was going to a school in Kobe. It's a school called Canadian Academy. Part of the Japanese culture club that they had was we were actually doing kabuki. And although kabuki is supposed to be a male-only thing using students, we didn't have enough of the guys to do the whole thing. Another thing was the fact that the school's policy wouldn't allow discrimination between the boys and the girls. Therefore, it was a kind of a special kabuki that allowed the girls to be in it.
Yeah.
I was only involved in it for a short amount of time because right after that we went to Canada. I'm guessing that's probably where I got interested in acting. And then, but before continuing with any acting, I actually started doing more behind-the-scenes stuff. In Canada, in high school, the school that I went to, we had this class, it was called ETV, Educational Television. And it was a class where they taught us how to make television programs. And most high schools, actually I don't know of any other high schools that had that class. The only reason that our high school had it was because the local community college had the equipment, but they had no place to store it. So they stored it in the basement of our high school. And our high school made a deal with the community college saying, we get to use the equipment because you're storing it at our school. And so we had a little studio in the basement as well. And so, I mean, there was a little bit of acting involved right there as well because we're making programs ourselves, but we're also acting for our own shows that we're making. I guess the biggest thing that I did at that time was about a 5-minute documentary concerning a local child development center that they had. And back then we're still talking VHS, so editing was such a hassle. You got the huge camera that goes on your shoulder, you got the huge porta pack off to the side, and usually it's a 2-man crew minimum. If you've got more people, you'd have one person off to the side doing the sound, and when you can't get the people together, then I'd be alone with a camera and a porta pack and headphone on my head and chasing people trying to do interviews, and as exhausting as it was, and as time consuming and tedious as a lot of the work was, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't think I'd be able to make a living off of that, so that was that kind of ended up in the past. Taking on odd jobs here and there, doing different things a few years down the line. Eventually I was in Tokyo, I was working as a truck driver. Yeah, I was driving a truck in Tokyo,
Yeah. I can just see it.
And, but one thing, driving a truck in Japan, there's the risks involved right there. Like you're driving. I was driving a 4-ton truck, and with a vehicle that size, it was late night that I'm driving, but the schedule being really tight. There are so many situations where something can go wrong, and when you're driving a truck and something goes wrong, there's a good chance you're going to kill somebody. Now, if I end up killing myself, that's my problem. If I end up killing somebody else, then that person's done with. That person's family is affected for the rest of their lives.
This interview got very deep.
but because of that risk, I didn't want to continue holding that risk, so I decided looking for another job. I was having trouble finding another job because so much of Japan is based on accreditation. What kind of papers do you have that can prove you're capable of doing the work that you say you're capable of doing? I went to so many companies saying that I can do translating work, I can do interpreting. This is the work that I've done in the past. I show them samples of things that I've done because there were periods where I actually translated operation manuals for heavy equipment, things like that. They'll look at it, but they'll say, okay, you did this, but where's the accreditation that proves you're capable of doing this?
Yeah, that sounds very Japanese.
And I'd be speaking to them in Japanese, and they say, well, we need proof that you're capable of speaking Japanese. We need written proof. And it's like... So... but I didn't want to continue with the risk of truck driving either. So I let the truck driving go. I decided I'll look for a job full time. But I need funds to live on. And so I came across an ad for extras for TV shows. And I thought, well, I used to do TV work. Not professionally, but I used to do TV work as well. It looks interesting enough. It'll be some cash in my pocket to tie me over until I get myself a real job. And I never got myself a real job after that.
Just stuck around.
Started out doing the translating work, but go to different sets. There are so many times that they'll have scripts written in Japanese, and they'll want people to. And they'll hand the script over, and they'll say, "Well, say this in English."
So they don't even write it before.
To a person who doesn't even read Japanese. So I'd be there and I would give them a simple translation. I'd help them out with that. I'd tell them, like, this is what you're supposed to be saying. Because often enough, the manager that I'd be with would be off in a back room somewhere taking a nap. So, but in order to get home at a reasonable hour, I can't wait for the manager to show up. So I end up doing a lot of the work for the manager. instant on-the-spot translating. But because of that, I'd start getting other jobs, TV stations that when they're trying to put together a reenactment, they'll have staff that can read the headlines of an article somewhere, but that's all they can read. And they say, this headline looks cool. Can you translate the article? So I'll translate the article from English into Japanese, send it back to the production company, and then they'll decide whether they want to turn that into a reenactment or not. And so that's where a lot of my recent work started, especially with the translating that I do for the media. And so the production companies, they know that I'm capable of doing it, and they've got all these other connections elsewhere. So somebody needs translating done quickly, they'll ask this production company if they know anybody. The production company will say, well, hey, Robert will do it. So he comes around to me. So it started out with acting, and then I got more and more of the translating. And it's kind of like, at the moment, translating seems to be more of the core work that I do. And then I also have the acting jobs on the side, which allows for that much more variety in my life, and it keeps things interesting. I've come to the conclusion that I'm no longer capable of holding one job and just doing that. I get bored too easily. Where I keep on doing all these different jobs, and then all the jobs that I do also have a variety within the work. So it's a variety within a variety, which keeps things interesting and at times quite exciting. And however, it's not as lucrative as a lot of these other people who work for the major corporations that are coming into Japan or whatever. But still, hey, I'm having fun.
Yeah. You were in or worked on Godzilla Final Wars?
Final Wars, I was...
Because according to IMDb, it just has you as uncredited, and I didn't know what it was.
I was in it, and I was at the shoot. I haven't been able to identify myself.
Right, yeah.
It's a really small, it wasn't even an actual part, it was more of an extra thing. But I was in it, and I guess I was on a list somewhere, so somebody put me on IMDb for that. I'm a lot more noticeable in a previous Godzilla to that, which was, I think it was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, where they were actually using Kyoryuger for a Mechagodzilla. It's not the old Mechagodzilla, but it's
a new suit.
Kyoryuger, as in based on a Godzilla bone structure or bones. Anyway, there was a scene where they had a press conference. Once again, no lines, but two of the main actors were in two separate parts of the room, and I just happened to be sitting right between the two of them. So, so when you watch it on the big screen, it's like I'm right in the middle of the screen.
It's me. It's me right there.
But I haven't had any actual true parts in any Godzilla movie. I've just been an extra.
Yeah, that led into how did you get to work on Sazer-X, and I thought that might have been connected, but obviously not.
In fact, not at all.
No, okay.
Not at all. Yeah, I mean, they're both the same movie company. I mean, they're both Toho. But Sazer-X was just... they were looking for somebody to be the partner to one of the main characters. Basically, the guy who pilots the... They consider it a ship, even though it doesn't really look much like a ship. But they need the pilot of the ship, and they didn't want just another person. They wanted something off the wall. And in fact, they were looking... The image they originally had was apparently something along the lines of Chewbacca. And I guess in Japan, I look most like Chewbacca.
Yeah.
But I went to the audition, and I walked in there, and one of the producers, the moment he saw me, apparently said, "That's what I want.
Yeah. You.
And the other members who were there, they wanted a discussion. That one producer said, that's what I want. And they're saying, let's discuss this. That's what I want.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
So, yeah, I was lucky right there. I mean, without giving any sort of presentation of my own, just the moment he saw me, he wanted me for the part. And then I obviously did the audition right there where I was able to do everything they asked me to do.
What was the audition?
Oh, it was just basically sit there, and the part of it was, let's see, it started out with them asking me questions. They asked me if I was familiar with the Japanese tokusatsu, and what kind of tokusatsu I liked. And I told them, like, tokusatsu, I mean, I watched it in what the Japanese would consider real time when I was a kid. Okay, Ultraman Ultra 7, I didn't see it the first time around. Those were reruns that I saw. Kaitekita Ultraman, I don't know what it's called in English, but
The Return of Ultraman, I think it's the general title of
I mean,
use.
his name got changed later on into Ultraman Jack. That I saw first run. Kamen Rider from the first one I had watched. Kikaida was one that I enjoyed. And then there were also shows that I hadn't watched, but I knew of their existence. Things like Denjin Zaboga, which never aired in Hiroshima. And so I never saw it, but I saw it in the kids' magazines. And I thought it was a cool-looking character. I watched reruns of older shows like Gekko Kamen, which the original Gekko Kamen... in fact, the original Gekko Kamen is the first TV drama made in Japan. So the first TV drama made in Japan was a tokusatsu show.
Yes!
Anyway, so we had
that.
this kind of conversation, and then they asked me to... I think they asked me to read a couple lines. I don't quite remember. And then... But one thing that was more important right there was whether I can do the action that was required. And so their action director came up to me and asked me to make a few moves, few combat move type things, and nothing major. And I was able to do that. They wanted me to act as if I'd been hit or whatever and roll, and I guess I rolled all right, and so they said, okay, we're going with him.
Do the Georgia?
Actually, I didn't have that. Like, those were the main three.
Yeah.
And with me, we had the little things that look like PSPs.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
We had those on before the PSP came in, it was in production, but I had that on my side, and there's a button on that I'm supposed to press in order to have my armored parts just kind of show up.
Was that something that they planned before the show started?
No.
Or... Really?
The moment that, or I mean, the armored parts were originally in the plans.
Yeah.
As far as how to get the armored parts on was something that they said, we hadn't thought about that. but I didn't have one of those what were they called? Sazer knuckles or something like that. But I didn't have one of those. So what am I supposed to do? So it's like, okay, well, we've got that thing. So let's say this button gives you the parts. So it's like
press this.
So I basically put my hand on the inside of the jacket, showing that I'm moving that out of the way in order to press the button here. And I pressed the button there, and I think that was shown on TV once. And after that, every time that I'm supposed to be in combat form, I'm already there. So, but I really enjoyed that because I actually got to do my own action for that. They couldn't find anybody at the right build with the beard and everything. Even though with Kyoryuger, they using the angles and everything, they managed to get somebody to make it look as if I'm actually right in the fight right there, which I would have liked to do it myself, but I'm guessing it's more for insurance purposes, especially with like Kamen Rider being a Toei thing as well, and the original Kamen Rider, Fujioka Hiroshi, he ran into a cable that holds up the telephone poles. Now these days, if most of these telephone poles no longer have these cables, and the few that still have the cables have a yellow plastic sleeve to show you that it's there. Well, back in early 1970s, they didn't have these plastic sleeves. So Fujioka Hiroshi, riding a motorcycle in the background, ran into the cable, broke both his legs. And that's where Toei decided the actors don't do the action anymore.
No, definitely not. He could not ride a kick anymore.
And so that's why whatever action that we do, in fact, do on TV is really minor and things that anybody can do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's understandable. I mean, they did that. They even did that in Star Wars with Mark Hamill wanting to do his own action, but they said, well, they're not going to insure you if you do your own action, and we need to have insurance on you. Therefore, you can't do your own action. And so his big fight scene with Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back, he didn't get to do his own action.
Well, you've ruined Star Wars for me. I didn't know that. That's why it's so dark.
Well, I mean, there are parts that he does his own action, but when the more possibly dangerous parts, they used a stunt double for him. Yeah, so I mean, there's people who get to do their own action are really limited. Jackie Chan's probably about the only one that gets to do his own action.
How does anyone insure him?
I don't even know if he has insurance.
He's just like, I just remember one interview. He was like, Americans,
I'll just let that hovercraft drive right over me.
Yeah. He's like, just put the camera there, point that way, and I'll jump over the wall. And he just does it in 5 minutes.
And it's like, okay, let's confirm that we can do this with the insurance companies. And as they're on the phone talking to the insurance companies, he's already doing the action, right?
Oh, already done. I wanted to. Unfortunately, Sazer-X got cancelled.
It wasn't actually cancellation. Well, yeah, the series
got cancelled, but there was talks of a fourth series, and you did an interview that you said you wanted to be involved with.
What happened was they were the original plan. Okay, the at the very start, it was supposed to be a 3-part series. When they got Konami in as the sponsor, and in the second year, when they had Grand Sazer to start with, which got a lot of attention. Because it was a new tokusatsu being done by somebody other than Toei, and also you have 12 heroes right there, and then eventually you've got this 13th guy who's not exactly a hero, but more of a bad guy, but not completely a bad guy either. Anyway, so you've got all these characters coming out, and so the first year they got decent ratings. The second year, when they came out with Just Eraser, that at that point they realized that the show starting in September, October, that area, it's cutting it too close to Christmas time. And so, as is the case with any kids show, I mean, it all boils down to dollars and cents. They need to make money off of these. The sponsor needs to be able to sell toys. If it's too close to Christmas, they don't have enough time to advertise in order to sell the toys. So they wanted to shift the year and start the program during the summer, preferably early summer. And so when Sazer-X started, when they started planning Sazer-X, they said that they wanted to make this shift. So instead of using it for the full year, they were only going to do it for 3/4 of the year, so that the 4th series can start in the summer.
Okay.
However, with the extremely poor ratings of Just Eraser, unfortunately, and they were like, the numbers were. I think they were saying that the numbers were like 1.8%, things like that. And on a Saturday morning, you don't expect high ratings in Japan. But like, you take a look at the Sunday morning shows; they're getting between 6 and 10%, because Sunday has always been a day off.
Yeah.
So Sunday morning, you get the kids. It's the equivalent of Saturday morning in North America watching cartoons. In Japan, Saturday used to be school. They're starting to have school on Saturdays again right now. But back then, as they started making Saturday a holiday, everybody seemed to be joining in on soccer clubs or whatever, and so they're still busy on Saturdays. So Saturday is supposed to be a time that you can't get good ratings. But even though you can't get good ratings, 1.8% is just too bad. And so by the time Just Eraser came to an end, Konami said that our original contract was for 3 years, and so the third of the series is all we're going to do. And so when Sazer-X started, it was already decided that Sazer-X was going to be the last of the series.
Wow.
But before Konami said it was going to be the last of the series, they had already made the plans to make it only 38 episodes. So we weren't able to go for the full year, and we also couldn't get a 4th series right there. And then, right off the bat, ratings just shot up. We were, I think the first episode we managed to pull off a little over 4%, which more than doubled what Just Eraser was at, and for a Saturday morning, 4% was supposed to be considered almost a miracle. So it was good, but it was too late for the corporations to continue backing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it was only 38 episodes. But at the same time, knowing that we were the last of the series, we didn't have to worry about having to play nice, so to speak. We didn't have to worry about it affecting the next series. So a lot of things were done off the wall. You watch a lot of the kids shows, even though they take an unexpected turn. An unexpected turn is usually like you're talking a 90-degree turn, where in Sazer-X you're 160 degrees and going backwards. You know, it's like completely like going somewhere that nobody expects anything. Like partway through the show, with my character Gordo, his wife shows up from 500 years in the future. You don't expect that. But that was part of the fun of being involved in it. And as far as the 4th series was concerned, getting involved in that was... It's just the fact that I enjoy doing that kind of work. So if there was a 4th, I would have liked to be in the 4th. But more than that, it was... it wasn't anything in particular that I was trying to hint at. You know, it was just a part of a conversation. There really wasn't anything to be read into that. It was just...
So from the beginning you knew...
If there's another one, I'd like another one, you know?
But there probably won't be.
At that point, the actors weren't told yet.
Yeah.
But I said... but I enjoyed doing Sazer-X, hoping that if there's another one, I'd like to be in it.
So, Kyoryuger.
Kyoryuger.
How did you get involved with that?
It was just actually more... It was a call out of the blue. And it was timed quite well because 2012, I was actually doing some interpreting work some corporate interpreting work in Miami. And I got back to Japan early December. And then a week or two later, I get this call saying that there's the new Sentai coming up, and they were wanting to have me in the show. The thing is, the management company that called me didn't seem to quite understand, get a grasp of what they were actually doing. So they were under the impression that I was supposed to be in one episode, and that I was supposed to be some sort of an advisor, sort of teacher, sort of thing for the new Sentai. I thought, okay, well, fine. I mean, either way. And being able to be in a Sentai show, I mean, I enjoyed being in Sazer-X, so I wanted, ever since Sazer-X ended, I wanted to be in another Tokusatsu show. And so I was really happy to be called. I wanted a regular part, but with some luck, this one-shot thing will pan out to be more than that, is what I was thinking. And so that was that. I mean, apparently Toei had looked for me, and when they looked for me on the internet, the first talent company management agency that popped up when doing a search with my name was the company that called me. So they found that company, they called that company, they said, can we get Robert? They said, yeah, we can get Robert. So they called me. And so a few days later, I went down to Toei for a fitting. So it's like, okay, I'm not going down for an audition, I'm going for a fitting.
So they specifically went for you?
Apparently so. And so, okay, I'm already going for a fitting. That's great. And then I thought, okay, if it's a one-time part, why do they need a fitting? Because usually, for most parts that only come out once, they'll do the adjustments on location. If something doesn't fit quite right, they'll fix it on the spot. Just make it look all right on camera. Because it's only for one time anyway. But if they're actually going to do a fitting for something to fit me just right, then they're probably considering reuse of the outfit. And then I go down, and then I look at the script that they give me, and it actually has a name for the character. Not only a name for the character, but also a color. It's like Ramirez. Yes. To start with, Ramirez. I mean, I'm thinking Ramirez. I don't look like a Ramirez. Is what I'm thinking. But at the same time, Sean Connery was also Ramirez for Highlander. So I thought, okay,
Scottish, that works. Yeah.
And then Kyoryuger, which in English, cyan.
Cyan.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, now that's one of the colors in my photocopier. So it is a color. And then I actually checked with Wikipedia about that. And cyan is apparently kind of like a blue-green. So it's not blue, it's not green.
So you're not quite sure what the color was when you
Well, I mean, they have a blue, they have a green, so I'm in between those two.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange choice. For, we've got the 5 team members. We've got the red, the blue, the green, black, and the pink. It's normal, and then cyan. It's like, what? It's not a silver or a gold.
But at the same time, it's a new color.
Yeah.
And I liked that because this is the 37th Sentai. Right. 37th Sentai, but I'm the first non-Japanese looking, non-Oriental character that transforms into one of the heroes. And so, why not have a new color for the first time as well? So 37th in the series, first time that cyan is used, and the first time that a Caucasian turns into one of the heroes.
Yeah.
Cool. However, we also have a new color for 37th series. Another new color was gray. So gray hadn't existed before.
Yeah, it was strange that they chose grey, but then also silver, because they're quite
similar.
Yeah, very similar.
Mm-hmm. And the guy who plays Gray, he used to be in Bokenja as Boken Silver.
Yeah.
And one of the comments he used to get in the beginning was, well, I mean, people would ask him if he forgot to polish his outfit. Hence the silver turning gray.
That's a fantastic story.
So polish that outfit and he turned silver.
Yeah,
but we had a silver come out later on. So, and then the ninth one, Violet. Well, Violet was a color previously used in Gekiren. So that Violet was second time around, but we had two new colors for Kyoryuger, which was fun. It was nice to have that. And then the fact that we're the two new colors were the two Spirit Rangers, which is kind of a reverse import because there was no such thing as a Spirit Ranger in the past in Japan. But in the North American Power Rangers, what do they call it? Jungle Fury?
Jungle Fury, yeah.
They had Spirit Rangers in that, and so they took that name and they brought it into the Japanese Sentai right there.
I did hear that the director, Koichi Sakamoto, said that Jungle Fury was one of his favorite Power Ranger series. Okay. So I can imagine that the Spirit Ranger thing was very cool because nobody was expecting 3 original Rangers. Never really done that before. It's Lightspeed.
Yeah, original Rangers in the States, and then taking that and bringing it, it just kind of brings the Sentai and the Power Rangers closer together right there, which I think it's interesting.
It wasn't until you got to the fitting that you found out that you were actually becoming a Ranger?
That I was, yeah. I mean, until I think the day before I went, I got the script actually, and so I'm thinking, okay, from this, it appears I'm going to be one of them. But the office that called me, well, like I said, they weren't familiar with the whole Tokusatsu scene, so they had told me that it was like a guest spot, and I may have been a ranger in the past, and that's it, and I'm not going to be one of the rangers for now. But I'm reading this script, and I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. I'm supposed to be a European, and there's the Ankidon hammer, and so at that point I'm thinking, like, is this supposed to be? Oh yeah, and then in the original script there was thunder and lightning as well. So I'm thinking, Thor?
You would have had the power of thunder and lightning.
Well, it was basically they were kind of equating thunder to the hammer. Right there. However, that was one of the what I was given the day before the fitting was one of the earlier versions of the script. And I guess when they were writing the newer scripts after that, they realized that Gold Ranger was supposed to be lightning. And in Japan, thunder and lightning are basically the same thing. So they took that part out of the script, saying that I don't get the thunder lightning treatment. And I thought that's all right. But I mean, until then, I was thinking, okay, the name's Ramirez, but at the same time, I got thunder and lightning and a hammer, and I mean, all the elements of Thor except the name.
Yeah, well, it would have been. This is the best place your mind would have gone to. Yeah.
And so I actually looked on the internet looking for a more appropriate name because Ramirez just didn't sound right. And then I go to the fitting and I see the armor and I'm okay, this is more Mediterranean. Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's more Spanish-y. Yeah.
So that was fine. But I mean, if I was wearing something that looked more Norse outfit, because of the Avengers and the Thor movie and everything, I thought that may be where they were bringing it from. But when I got to the fitting, I found that wasn't the case. So I thought, okay, well, no need to stir up anything that doesn't need to be stirred up.
So how long was it between fitting and filming?
I think it was somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks. There was a bit of time, and that's why the change in the script as well.
Usually, we know what the Sixth Ranger is going to look like before the show starts because the toy catalogs come out.
Yeah.
It shows you the 3 months of toys. So you're like, oh, okay, that's what gold is. But there was nothing about Cyan, and it wasn't until like the week before. I can't remember if it was the preview of the episode. That's a new Ranger.
Yeah.
What? And then you appeared, and then you kind of left, and everyone was like, well, so he's gone now? Is he sticking around? And I think it was episode 9 or 10 that you appeared again, and it was just like, he just popped in a scene. Like, it's just like talking to Tori, and it's like, wow, okay, so you're just going to keep coming back then. Then
Yeah,
that's
well,
kind of what happened.
I mean, in the beginning, right there, I mean, the first episode, that I was in, it was just me, no transformation, nothing like that, and so you see the emblem right there of Ankido, but okay, so I've got a partner dinosaur type thing, but there wasn't any indication that I transformed. And then the end of that episode, in the preview, they show Cyan just for half a second. And so it's like, hey, this guy's going to change. You know? But, and then it's like, okay, so is he the sixth warrior? But at the same time, Ankidon's 7.
Yeah. That was something we were like, but we've got the numbers for the toys, so
why does 7 come before 6? Yeah.
And then in the base, there's a 7 and it's like 8 and 10. Yeah.
And so, I mean, there was a little bit of confusion, which I think was intentional.
Yeah.
Keep them guessing, kind of thing.
Yeah, that was great.
And that generated that much more talk on the internet, which made it that much more. I think it made it that much more fun for everybody as well. And so, I mean, you have the original 5 right off the bat, and then you have number 7 pop up, and then I guess it was a little more than a month later that number 6 shows up. Which is gold.
Yeah.
And so, there was some confusion right there. And then at that point, I guess they were kind of showing that Ramirez, being a spirit ranger, isn't always there to help, but he's more there in order to bring the rest of the members together as well. And so, I mean, that explains the reason that I'm not always there. I'm always running off looking for somebody new, but the only new person I'm looking for is, in fact, Gray, because, well, on the other hand, I don't think even Tori knew that he was going to become Silver.
No.
So we're still trying to figure out who's Silver, kind of thing, until suddenly he feels the rhythm of the planet, kind of thing. And then, but I guess Tori, as well as Cyan and Gray, probably already knew of the existence of Violet, even though not knowing that it was going to be the granddaughter.
So your character was roughly, I think it was 800 years old?
500.
500 years old.
Or I died 500 years ago.
But you had no transformation device.
No.
So what was the reason for you and Gray both not getting transformation devices?
It was never explained. I'm guessing it's more just along the lines that they didn't have the technology, it didn't exist. I don't know if we actually transformed in the past. Maybe after becoming spirit rangers, after dying, we gained the ability to combine our souls with the batteries, and I don't know. It's until Toei comes up with an official version of it, we're never going to know why. But my guess would be along like it's. They never mentioned that I fought as a Kyoryuger in the past. They said that I did fight. They didn't say that I was Kyoryuger. And so it's possible that I fought as a human, and then eventually, they did hint at the fact that I got killed in battle.
Yeah.
And therefore, after being killed in battle, the spirit kind of managed to become a ranger. Hence Spirit Ranger.
I suppose from a Toei point of view at least, if they'd given you a transformation device, it would have been a new toy that they'd then have to market, and if you, at the time, you were saying you were a bit unsure about how much you were going to be in the show, at least from a business point of view.
There is that possibility, yeah. And another thing is, even let's see, a character like mine, especially using a person like me, it's they don't know, they wouldn't have a clue as to whether, if they made a product that was related to me, would it sell or not. Can Japanese kids identify with a Caucasian hero? Yeah, they watch TV and they want to be red, they want to be black, they want to be green, and they can identify with them because they look similar as well. And then this guy comes out, long blonde hair with a beard and a bit of excess stuff around the waist, and and it's like the kids see that, and can they identify with that? Another thing is, speaking of the excess around the waist, do they want to identify with that? And so the toy manufacturers might be a little hesitant to make something that they don't like. It becomes really uncertain as to whether it sells or not. However, I've heard so many people, glad to hear this too, I've heard so many people say that their kids, I'm the favorite of their kids, kind of thing. Not everybody, but there's a handful of them out there. And I'm really happy to hear that. I actually, the kids like me. So that, it turned out to be good, but I think it could have been considered too high a risk to have any main toy come out, which was me. When you're talking in the business situation, there's just so many factors that, it's dollars and cents, and can they afford to take that risk or not? And quite often they're not willing to, because there's a huge loss that could be incurred if it doesn't pan out.
Okay, we've just switched around just so we can get a little bit cozy together.
You just want to be on camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have that much of an ego problem, actually. What was your experiences like on the set with the rest of the cast and crew?
Most of the time, I'd be hanging around with the crew, actually, not too much with the cast. Because the cast generally have, like the rest of the cast had larger, longer lines than I did, and I didn't want to interfere with them trying to remember their lines and everything. Jiro, who was in the Torin outfit, he, from age-wise, he's closest to me. He's actually the same age as myself. And so there were times that we'd just be sitting around talking about different shows that we used to watch as kids or whatever.
Would he still be in the suit?
He was in the suit.
With the head on or the head off? I just have a very funny image of you two talking over coffee.
Was the head removable? His head's out. I can't remember whether the head was hanging in front or if it was removed. The back of his suit is wide open and his arms are out and everything. I just can't remember what. I think the head was removable, so there probably was no head. And then with Jiro-san, there'd be the other suit actors as well. And so I was hanging around more with the suit actors than with the other cast members. Even though the first two episodes that I was in, there was a lot of time spent with the girl who plays Ani, Pink, because of the fact that there was so much time shot together. Mm-hmm. Even though, there's going to be people out there who are going to say that they're jealous of the fact that I got to hang around with the girl and all that stuff, but she is younger than my oldest daughter. She's the same age as my second daughter.
She was 15 at the time of filming as well, wasn't she?
15 at she was 15 when the shoot started. So first 2 episodes or so that they shot, she was 15 years old. And her birthday's in June, so she's actually younger than my second daughter. She's the same grade as my second daughter. And so the first 2 episodes that I was on, there were those scenes that I'd be on the back of the motorcycle with her. She does not have a motorcycle license. The motorcycle is sitting on a trailer, which is being pulled by a truck. And she's riding right there, and she could not pronounce Ankidon right. And so we had to do that over and over and over. It's supposed to be Ankidon, and she's going Ankidon. And it's just a slight difference in the phonetics right there. But the director was particular about that. And it was not one of the warmest days around, but it wasn't that cold either. But I mean, I'm on the back of the motorcycle there with the wind blowing right at me and screaming my head out. I'm afraid of speed. But, and like my arms around her waist, and I'm thinking like, okay, now no girl's going to like my arms around her waist, so I don't hold as tight as I should, and she's saying I should hold tighter, and being, I don't know, I'm trying to be a gentleman where I didn't need to be, I guess, or whatever, but it was fun working with them. But as I said, most of my interaction was with the suit actors and the crew. And because a lot of the crew I've worked with in the past with, not only with Sazer-X, but also with other TV shows that I've been on, we end up running into each other with one thing or another. And so I'm a lot more familiar with the rest of them. And the main cast, eventually 6, were almost always together, making it so that they had a kind of a tighter relationship between themselves.
Do you have any good stories of when you were filming? Any funny stories or accidents, maybe?
Dai Gray, he could never get his lines right. Especially when we were in the recording studio doing our voices, and he'd pronounce something wrong or just get his line wrong or whatever. We actually, I'm guessing I'm allowed to say this because we actually talked about this on stage at the Budokan when we had our live performance right there. And then often enough, if a word is kind of like based in English, like in Japanese it'll be read like katakana reading right there, but he'll have trouble with that. So I mean, he's a kind of from a leftover from a generation past. English language words he has trouble with. I mean, he was in 47 Ronin. On set, it was all English. He was in Europe shooting that, but he still has trouble with English. And so it's like, there'd be a line where he's supposed to say something, maximum victory Juden finish or something like that. And he can't get it right. And as he can't get it right, I'm standing beside him and saying it in English. So he's trying to say maximum, and I'm beside him saying maximum. And victory. And it's like he's trying to say it the best he can, and then he comes in English beside him. We're standing side by side, and that was fun.
Yeah, I can imagine it only got worse. We got maximum wrong. Blah, blah, blah.
But there were situations similar to that where it wasn't really so much something that was required on camera or with the audio, but there'd be certain words that the crew use, which is accepted as Japanese right now, but the words originate in English. And some people would say it acting like they're speaking with an English language sort of accent, but it would be completely off. So I'd correct them. And then they'd come back, and then we'd be doing that for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then eventually the guy on camera says, Stop it. We need to shoot. This is not an English language class.
Speaking of accents, your Japanese accent on the show was... It's quite strange, because you can speak fluent Japanese perfectly. Like, you've lived here all your life. Why is it that your accent was different in the show?
See, back in Sazer-X, I spoke what would be considered normal Japanese. And with Kyoryuger, what they wanted was not only the appearance of a foreigner, but somebody who sounded like a foreigner. So they wanted me to speak with a foreign accent. However, if I spoke with a real foreign accent, as a foreigner would speak, then you have to keep in mind, this is a kids' show. The kids need to be able to understand what I'm saying. Now, when a foreigner speaks Japanese with a heavy foreign accent, Japanese variety shows and everything, you'll see that they have subtitles saying exactly the same thing that the person is saying, because you can't understand that foreigner because of their accent. So in order to avoid that, I spoke with an accent which the kids would be able to understand, which ended up sounding a lot like a Japanese people acting like a foreigner speaking Japanese. So
That's a bit confusing, yeah.
Yeah. But the director seemed to like it, and so we went with that, and eventually it got to be a little tough to remember my lines because of that.
Okay, so we've got some questions from Twitter.
Okay.
We've got a whole bunch here, so let's see if we can get through a bunch of them. Mr. Change Dragon wants to know, why did you sometimes only appear in a suit and not actually appear out of suit?
There are times that unfortunately I have other jobs that I do, and especially last year during the spring, I was in Bulgaria for 3 weeks shooting a movie, that kind of thing. You know, if I'm not in the country, I really can't make any appearances.
Toku Deka asks, what was your hardest line to remember?
There weren't any hard lines whatsoever that I was given. As said previously, I was born and raised in Japan. Japanese is basically my first language, and therefore, there were a couple of times where trying to say a line in Japanese with that made-up accent caused the problem. And I couldn't do the accent and the lines at the same time, so I'd have to run over it a few times. But other than that, I really, there's not a single line that comes to mind when I'm thinking difficult. They all just came out the same.
Sean Bass asks, have you ever been approached for anything Kamen Rider related?
Kamen Rider
Hey.
related. No, I haven't. I'd like to be, but I
Preferably
haven't.
as a rider, he said.
I would love that.
Oh god, that was so good.
But
That's the dream.
but now that I've done one of the Sentai, now that I've been in one of the Sentai, this could create an opening somewhere in the future. It's a lot of Toei is internal connections right there, and so if they recognize you, if they remember you from a previous show, and so I mean, often enough, if you watch the Toei Tokusatsu shows, you'll see people who were in the Rider shows in Sentai, people who were in Sentai in Riders, because they're kind of, the actors are interchangeable.
At 753 asks, will you ever come to a convention in the USA so I can shake your hand?
I would love to, if somebody were to invite me, but more than that, if somebody pays my plane ticket, definitely.
Okay, so pay for him and he will come.
Otherwise, if I'm in the area, yeah, definitely. But I have no plans at the moment to be anywhere at any time that there are any conventions, but you never know.
He also says that he absolutely adores you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I love to hear that stuff.
Oh, you're going to like this. Gonna love this one then. Hakase Heart says, "Screw the questions. Just tell him he's awesome."
Thank you.
Chaos, the Gold, and Torin. Who would you kiss, marry, or kill?
Who? What? Kiss, marry, kill. Never thought of that.
I think Torin would be the keeper.
And I like Dogordo. I like Dogordo.
Enough to marry?
Well, in a sense, if you become a partner with him, I mean, you become biologically intertwined with the guy. You know? So, I mean, it's actually a much more closer relationship than any marriage, in fact. Because you'd be sharing more or less the same body. And then you have Chaos. Chaos doesn't seem to have, to me, I don't feel he has much of a personality. I mean, he's just wanting to destroy the planet. That's all he is. So yeah, kill him.
Yeah.
And
so just kiss Torin.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that
Either that or fry him up. Yakitori time.
Yakitori time. Definitely. What's your favorite Tokusatsu series?
That's a very hard one to answer. I'd say a toss-up between the original Kamen Rider and Kikaida.
Will you be making an appearance in next year's Tokyuger versus Kyoryuger?
If somebody out there can convince the guys at Toei that I should be in the next one, yeah, definitely.
Deboff or Deboss? How is it written?
It's written in Japanese. Debosu.
Debosu.
I think I've seen it written with the TH. I think. But my memory isn't what it used to be.
Fair enough. Yuri of Setet says, "Do you know lots of Western fans love you? And how do you feel about that?"
I wasn't aware of that, and hearing that, I'm ecstatic. Love it. Feels good.
At a load of hoopla, as a Canadian fan, it's cool to see someone with Canadian background in the show. Would you ever consider coming back to Canada and doing conventions?
As with a previous question where conventions, definitely, if I have the opportunity to do so, I'd love to go. Now, as far as going back to Canada is concerned, it's a back and forth deal. I mean, if I can afford it, I go to visit in Canada. My parents live in Canada right now. They're in Ottawa. I don't know whether I should be saying that or not. Now everybody's going to be knocking at my parents' door. My oldest daughter is attending university in Ottawa right now. So I have relatives in Canada. There's a lot of places in Canada. Like, I went to high school in northern BC. I used to work in Banff for some time. There are places in Canada where I still have friends. I still have relatives. So whenever the opportunity presents itself, I would love to be in Canada. And then if that opportunity coincides with a convention somewhere, then all the better.
See, one of the problems about being a Western fan of Tokusatsu is that we don't feel like there's any contact whatsoever between, Japanese companies or like decision making, that they never ever take into consideration. There's a lot of Western fans that buy the toys and watch the shows every week. Would you agree with that? Is there any kind of thought process about how fans outside of Japan will receive products?
In fact, actually, see, I don't think that's only with the Tokusatsu field, though. I mean, even with the animations, but more with the Tokusatsu, that the shows are made with a Japanese audience in mind. They're not really considering what goes on beyond that. And so the show itself, in fact, with the Sentai series, we're not only is it a Japanese audience, it's a Japanese child audience that they're looking for. Now, I can understand them keeping it a kids show. I mean, that's one of the attractions. Even for adults, it's fun to watch what's intended for the kids. But keeping it to a Japanese audience only, and at the same time, Japan's talking about trying to become an international nation, Tokyo becoming an international community, and all this stuff, and then at the same time, creating content that is geared towards Japanese only. I like. I mean, I hope they'll continue bringing in more and more elements that will allow foreigners to identify with the Tokusatsu shows, and then try to create the content to become more and more appealing to foreigners as well. And by creating content appealing to foreigners, that would include, like, even with Kyoryuger, not only was I a foreigner on there, but they had the girl who plays Pink, she's supposedly raised in the States. Black is supposedly half English.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, and try to turn it into a more worldwide, global thing. And I think a lot of this is coming from the director as well, because the director, one of the directors, Sakamoto-san, he has experience working with the Power Rangers in the States. And so I think he's trying to kind of abridge that gap, and I'm really glad to be a part of this effort, and possibly have more foreigners in the show later on, but with some luck, I don't know. Maybe eventually when Kyoryuger becomes a Power Ranger in the States, maybe I'll get to play the same part in the States. That'll be fun.
That would be pretty great, yeah.
But I don't know how many people would really want to see that, but
I think that would definitely be a first.
It would be entertaining for me.
Yeah, it'd definitely be worth watching at least.
But I realize more and more people are seeing the attraction of Tokusatsu as much as, like, some people would say that the special effects are cheap, cheesy, whatever, but that's part of the fun of it, I think. And just, I don't know, I mean, I didn't realize that so many people had been interested in the Japanese Tokusatsu scene until I got the part on Kyoryuger, and especially until I met you guys.
Really?
Well, I mean, I'm working in a Japanese community, working on a show that's for Japanese kids. Once again, it's a Japanese market that we're looking at, and then being called by foreigners. I mean, being asked to have an interview for an overseas audience. It makes me realize that the market, or the audience, the viewers, span a much larger field than I had realized. And I wish I would have realized this earlier, and that way I may have been able to incorporate a little more of this sense into what I'm doing. But knowing this now, it will keep. I'll keep that in mind for any future projects that I have, which could, in the least bit, possibly have an international audience. And I feel like I'm just running on and on right here and not really making much sense.
No, that's actually that's a fantastic end. Thank you very much for coming. You have been
thank you for having
wonderfully nice.
And all we need now is for somebody to decide that I need to be on the Power Rangers in the States. And
yeah. I'll post this Ranger board and everywhere. And, yeah, that'll be fine.
And then I'll be able to make the rounds to all the conventions as well.
Oh, yeah.